Now, Washington Mornings on the Mall. 105.9 FM. And AM 630. WMAL.
7:07 on WMAL. It's Friday. Wilson's back. Made the trip back from Charlotte yesterday.
Just to get that on the record, why is that they closed down our Radio Row at midnight last night, and so there would have been no place for me to broadcast from. In fact, I'm noticing my friends on Fox and Friends have moved across to the NASCAR Hall of Fame for their morning show.
Could have gone to the NASCAR Hall of Fame.
There is no phone line.
Oh, is that right?
Out there. We didn't have.
Well, I'm glad you're back in the studio.
That's good.
It's a lot easier to.
But I wanted to explain it. People say, "Well, why are you back?" The big speech lesson. Well, that's why.
All right. So now we got that out of the way. We are pleased to be joined by John Fund, National Review columnist, author of the new book, Who's Counting? How Fraudsters and Bureaucrats Put Your Vote at Risk. John, good to have you back on the program.
Pleasure, Brian.
All right, so we haven't talked to you since the Republicans had their convention. Democrats had their convention. The president gave a big speech. Put the president's speech aside for right now. How do you think the Republicans and their convention went, and do you think there was any extra buzz or bump coming out of the Romney camp because of it?
I think both parties did their job. They managed to rev up their base. For the job of convincing undecided voters who to vote for, I think both parties fell short. But, since Barack Obama has the burden of defending his time in office, I have to say, I don't think his speech did nearly what it should have done to defend his record. Frankly, I think a lot of people in that hall last night would have been wondering, gee, if we only could change the Constitution and run Bill Clinton.
Yeah, we talked about that beforehand. That was a possible risk of having Clinton speak because he may overshadow President Obama. And the response from President Obama last night was good, but people seem to be talking more about Bill Clinton's speech than Barack Obama's speech.
Well, remember, Clinton presided over an era of peace and prosperity, and at 8:30 this morning, we're probably going to get another anemic or mediocre jobs report. I mean, look, it's 8.3% unemployment, no new jobs being created beyond that, which we could expect from population growth. I have to say, I think the Obama record is pretty much what he has to run on. And notice last night there were very few specifics on what he would do in a second term. There were all these goals. We're going to have manufacturing jobs. We're going to have algae deployment. We're going to have wind and solar. But there's nothing specific to make us think the next 4 years is going to be better than the last 4 years.
John, the Democrats often complain that they can't get a fair break with conservative media. They always complain about Fox News. And yet you reported down there that the Democrats made a decided effort to avoid any interaction with the press, and that they didn't want to deal with reporters.
It was awful. Look, Radio Row is supposed to be a forum where everybody involved in the convention can talk about what's going on. And instead, it became a Democratic National Committee propaganda site. There were some conservative hosts who showed up there. They paid large fees. They paid thousands of dollars to plug in their equipment. And what they get, they got the promise that they were going to get Democratic convention speakers, and a few minutes before they were supposed to go on, somebody would come up and say, well, we're canceling. Why? Because you don't address our audience. That's dirty pool. I mean, you're luring people to a convention on the promise of giving them access to speakers, and then you pull the rug out from under them?
Yeah, we had, for example, Ben LeBolt was supposed to be on our program. He's a very capable. I mean, there's nothing that guy can't handle. There's nothing he's ever been handed that he couldn't, knock out of the park. He's pretty good. And yet, at the last minute, he canceled.
Well, it's worse than that. The DNC had a separate room for favorite hosts. Roger Hedgecock, who's a former mayor of San Diego, a serious person, he sent an intern to try to snag guests when they came out of that special VIP room. The intern was threatened with being ejected from the entire convention.
Oh, man.
So finally they used their own personal contacts to get Senator Dick Durbin from Illinois to appear. And Durbin's press guy had to admit they were canceling because Roger Hedgecock, was a conservative, and they had been told not to do any conservative hosts at the convention. Apparently, there was an enemies list at the convention.
Oh, I wonder if I made the list.
I strongly suspect that you didn't get very many guests, and that means you're probably suspect.
Well, I will say we did get a few guests, and
we did
because of our hustle and because we have the most excellent booker in all of morning radio.
Let me ask you though, John, do you think that would be any different for the Republicans? I mean, would they want to do, an interview with Ed Schultz or Rachel Maddow?
Well, all I can tell you is I was on Radio Row, and NPR was there.
Yeah, we were there. We saw them all.
Yeah, I mean, I was there, and I was happy to do those shows. No one stopped me from doing those shows, and I felt no interference. Look, I've been going to conventions since the 1980s. I've never seen this level of thought control at any convention, Republican or Democrat.
Interesting. All right. Speaking of that, what do you think of the future of conventions? There's been some talk now that these are the last conventions that we'll see. They'll be completely different next time. They cost a lot of money. You really don't get any news out of them. What do you think about where we'll be 4 years from now when it comes to conventions?
Look, as a member of the media, I love conventions. It's like a 4-year reunion of all the people you know in politics and journalism. But I think the really offensive part of the conventions is the taxpayers are spending $136 million a year to put these conventions on. That's outrageous. The party should put on any kind of convention they want. That you should not expect the taxpayers to pick up the dime. Conventions were paid for by the parties till the 1970s. Once again, that should be the rule.
Yeah. All right. I know your book. This is about voting fraud. Where has anything changed in the last couple of weeks? Or are you still very concerned about what's going to happen on November 6th?
Well, I thought it was really bizarre that Bill Clinton took time out of his speech to attack, laws to try to prevent voter fraud. And it turns out the very afternoon Bill Clinton was speaking, a state legislator, a Democratic state legislator, a city councilman, and a police officer in his native Arkansas were convicted of 45 counts of voter fraud. It was just astonishing. Clinton getting up saying, we shouldn't have these laws to prevent voter fraud. And, of course, voter fraud is in the headlines and is back in his home state of Arkansas. I think we're going to see an election where 10,000 lawyers from both parties are going to be monitoring the election. That many lawyers means litigation. I just hope this election isn't close because we're going to see a Florida-style meltdown. If it's close, we're going to see recounts like Bush v. Gore in not one state but 4 or 5 states. That's not good for anybody. And that's why my book, Who's Counting, is all about how let's limit the bureaucratic bungling that happens in these elections and also provides the opportunity for potential fraud. We can make it easy to vote and hard to cheat, and we still have time to improve the system between now and November.